Who doesn't know the story from John, the feeding of the 5,000? I hope you do, because you heard it last week, although I was a little bit worried when no one could remember, other than Dee and myself, what we did last week. I'm sure that's not totally true, and I apologise. I've had to put my coat on. It's a bit cold up front here. So winter is truly with us. Yeah. I see a few of you have got your gloves on and keeping yourself nice and warm. It's good to be warm. And it is important that we look after ourselves. Even in this story that we've read today, Jesus is worried about the state of the people. Not just their spiritual state, but their physical state. They are what? They are hungry, aren't they? Fortunately, I've never lived too far away from a tuck shop or a 7-Eleven or something like that. There's always been food relatively close to where I've lived. I haven't experienced extreme hunger, but in a church that I used to be a part of, not too far away from here, in the Churches of Christ, I had a lady who had been part of the forced marches with the Japanese. She'd been called into Singapore and then been transported, and then she'd been forced to march under the Japanese in World War II. And she told me what it was like to experience extreme hunger. I later talked to my in-laws, Irene's parents, and they told me that likewise, after the war, they had to go and eat grass and boil up grass because there was no food after the Russians came through. And whatever we might think of the German people and the Nazi powers that were there then, it must have been a terrible experience for young children to go hungry. In fact, I asked, do we really know what hunger is when we sit here in Australia? Some of you may have experienced extreme hunger in your past. I don't know your stories in that depth. But here today, we have hungry people. People who need to be fed. It is a story that we spoke of last week, but I have to say that be careful when you're mixing your Gospels. My dear friend Nathaniel over there would have studied Synoptic Gospels, I'm sure, and each of the Gospel writers writes from a different perspective. And then we have this fourth Gospel, which is the strangest of all Gospels, which is called the Gospel of John. The fourth Gospel, which has a lot of different stories. In fact, the feeding of the 5,000 is one of the few crossover stories that you actually see coming together on the way in Jesus' ministry. But they write for different purposes. Mark writes a question, who is Jesus? Constantly is asking the reader, and in respect to each one of us, who do you think Jesus is? Whereas John is coming from a totally different perspective. John is saying, this is the one. In fact, he starts his gospel off by saying, in the beginning God created the world, and then it starts to talk about Jesus coming in. The Word became flesh. We're pretty familiar with that. So John doesn't want to just ask the question. John wants to point a signpost to say, this is the one. Whereas Mark is leading up to asking Peter and the other disciples, who do you say I am? Some say I'm this, some say I'm that, but who do you say? So you can see they're coming from different questions and different ways of seeing things. But the similarities are that there were hungry people. Now I want you to think a little bit at the moment. I want to talk about what are people in our community hungry for? And maybe we can have some answers. What do you think? People in this society, because we've got plenty of food, by and large, haven't we? But what are we, this day and this age, hungry for?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. U3A and all of those sorts of groups coming along. Although one must ask, at my fingertips, literally, when I get my iPad out, I have access to the greatest amount of knowledge that probably mankind has ever known. And there's a beautiful word that we've discovered, isn't there? It's a word that's only really recently come into fashion in the last 15, 20 years. But we even talk about Googling something. We can Google something to get that knowledge. But I agree with you, we hunger and thirst for knowledge. What else do we, what else do you think do people hunger and thirst for in this community? Acceptance. Acceptance. Jean, what was your one? Oh, I'm a bit worried. You're sitting too close together. You're starting to sort of connect with one another. Yes, Nathaniel. Wisdom. Yeah, I have to say, in listening to the Labor Party and their debates that they've been having, and I'm really good at knocking politicians. Why? Because I think they're a pretty easy target. But they set themselves up to be a pretty easy target. And listening to the nonsense that they've been speaking about at their conference, we need a bit of wisdom. And we need some good leadership as well to show us that wisdom, don't we? I think one of the things that I'd say, in my experience of living here the last 20 years, is that we've had very few good leaders. Whether which side you believe in or which side you follow, we need some leadership. Other things that you might think. Love. Do we need love? Of course we do. I find it very interesting, Dee, and I'm really happy that you brought that subject up, because it seems that we sing a lot about love, we write a lot about love, but really love is a pretty elusive thing for many people. We talk about it in multitudes, don't we? But where do we find love? Where do we see it? Maybe with our kids, I don't know, but it's a hard world. It's a tough world in many respects. And I think it's really... this is a besides. Did any of you see that there is a site that's for cheaters who want to find partners called Ashley Madison? It was this week, and this site has literally millions of people all over the world who are signed on to this site. I think it's about 3 million people, so that they can cheat on their partner and find another partner. And this week, their security has been hacked, and there are people all around the world feeling very nervous that their details might be sought out by someone else. Love is an elusive thing. I don't know about you, I sit in shopping centres. I'm a shopping centre person, and I love sitting there and I watch people. It's a bit creepy, I know. I relate very much to that point where Jesus looks upon the people, the multitude, and he says, you know, I wish I could just gather you under my wings. You know, just like a mother gathers her chicks under the wings. And I look and I see a world that seems pretty lost. We are so influenced by the advertising around us, by the demands around us that we've got to have this and we've got to have that. It is interesting, the things that perhaps we take for granted in our lives that we could do quite well without. I put my dear old iPad aside for a little while, and I had to say I had some withdrawal symptoms from it. You know, it's terrible, but that's the way. We've got to have these things to enhance our lives. But does it make our lives any better? Jesus, in today's story, sees the needs of the people. And he said to his disciples, as he says to us today, how are we going to feed them? How are we going to look after their needs? Not just their spiritual needs, by saying fantastic words on a Sunday. And my goodness, I hope I say a few fantastic words, and I hope you say a few fantastic words, and you say a few fantastic words, Nathaniel, as we preach. It does worry me when we ask what we preached last week, and none of us can remember. And the secret is sometimes I can't even remember what I said last week. So it is a bit scary. But, you know, people need more than that, don't they? We need to have the real needs in our lives met, as the people around us. And perhaps sometimes we have to speak truth to power in saying when we see something that is false and would not lead us to a better life, we've got to speak out about it. For example, that's one of the reasons why I speak out about what I consider rampant consumerism. The fact that we've got to buy more, get more, to make our lives more meaningful. It does seem to me that we are missing the point, because what is it that really gives our lives meaning? For you, what is it that gives your life meaning?
God.
God? Fantastic. What other things?
Family.
Family. That's very important, isn't it? You know, to feel that you've got a family, you're loved by your family and you love your family. That's a really, really special thing. What other things?
Friends.
Friends? You've got to have friends. I better not sing because my voice will go. Or you might go as well. But it's true, friends. Can you buy friends? Well, I suppose you can in some ways, but not real friends.
You can buy Facebook.
You can buy Facebook. Thank you, Dee. Dee's talking. You know, I was talking to a friend who said, I've got 568 friends on Facebook and I haven't met 560 of them. So, you know, it's true, isn't it? What other things give your life meaning? Is it relationships? Isn't that true? Those things that hold us together as a community, as people. None of these things are about things that we can buy, we can purchase. They're about the actual realities of life. And I want a church that deals with the realities of people's lives, not just the cleverness of our theology. I could have been really clever today and gone through exegesis of this passage, and we can talk about why they wanted to make Jesus king. That's a good thing to do in some circumstances, but for us today, who are faced constantly with people walking onto our church site who have needs, and I have to say, I came here on Wednesday, I sat down with a couple of people who were coming to one of our programs that's run at the men's shed, and we were just talking, and the reasons why they're coming is not because we have great programs, it is because they have needs in their life. Is that true, Greg?
Very much so.
Very true.
Very.
People have needs, and if the church can't meet the needs, then we're not doing our job. We are not calling and responding as Jesus wants us to. Now we can be like the disciples in this story, and we can say, we haven't got the money, we haven't got the facilities to do it. But guess what? Jesus said, don't worry about it, just go and do it. And at the end of the story, as I said to the young people, there is an abundance. There is 12 baskets full. Now I could go into talking about 12 and how that has biblical significance of being 12 and 12 being a perfect number. There were 12 disciples, you know, and there were 12 tribes, you know, all of those sorts of things. But really that's not the point. What the point of it is there was an abundance. Now, having been fed, the people sort of got it a little bit wrong, and they said, we want to make Jesus king. Now, if you go back to the old story of David that we read before, who liked the story of David? You know, Bathsheba. Good old story, isn't it? Gee, I could have beaten that one up today. I could have made us all feel very guilty about what we do and what we don't do, and talked about sexual immorality and pointed the finger out. But you know what? Every time you point a finger out, you point fingers back at yourself. Isn't that true? And what we need is a church that is going to respond to the world and the community that we live in. Not just in word, not just in ideals, but really respond. I believe that we are a church that does respond through the life of our op shop, through our garage sales. We get connections with people, don't we? It's never about how much we sell, although it is nice to make those sales, but it's about the people that walk in, through our men's shed, through the various programs that we do. It's about touching lives and meeting needs. And really it's a simple message that I have for you today, but the feeding of the 5,000 is about meeting the real needs of people. Interesting, it doesn't say anything about the way that Jesus preached or what he preached. It just talks about this story, and we could go into how the miracle happened and whether it happened, and you know, whether everyone moved with compassion as the boy brought out his lunchbox, that they all got their lunchbox out. I don't think that matters. I really don't. I think what does matter is that people's needs were met, and there was an abundance at the end of the day. We believe in the God of abundance. May the God of abundance touch each and every life here today and the lives of those around us.